chapter 2 lesson now on how to become a teacher, and it is has to do with what does it take to become a professional educator. And of course there's a number of steps here about how you go through the process, but ultimately what happens to become a teacher. Universities do a job of preparing you, but we do not make you teachers. That you have to be certified to teach, and each state gives you certification. In South Dakota, our State Department of Education does that. The university recommends you and has to recommend you, but the state actually grants that certification. But we're going to talk about those levels of preparing and those levels of your process of educating, and about ethics and the different roles teachers play. And so this is the Chapter 2 lecture. So we'll continue on with our discussion of Part 1 of this chapter of the profession. And this one is about becoming a professional educator. And some of you are on your way of taking those first steps, but let's go on and see what that has to do. Well, what does it take? Well, when you prepare for teaching, you develop a commitment to career-long growth. Okay, and this is the thing that I think some people forget, is that it isn't necessarily this initial 4 or 5 years in college at a university setting. That is just the initial part. That initial part just is the beginning. The real learning is lifelong, and like so many people in any profession, I learned more about teaching after I started teaching than I ever did in college. That what we'll do at the university level is very important. Build that foundation for you to grow from, but most of it is this lifelong commitment. Here's those focus questions. I'm going to let you look at those here just for a second. Well, professionalism is a deliberate developmental experience. Members or individuals of professions share common values and perspectives. I'll take you out here to the textbook talks about that. Preparing to teach. When you prepare to teach, you develop a commitment to career-long growth. Your initial preparation program helps you start. So professionalism is very deliberate and developmental experience. And again, if you don't see it that way, you're going to be kind of frustrated in that process of preparing yourself to teach, and actually teaching will frustrate you. There's a couple organizations along the way that have played a part, and they have a role. Ethical standards to which members subscribe comes from those. Shared commitment to certain ethical practices, concern for the development of capacities of all learners, and a sense that education should be a high priority concern for our entire society. And remember, we studied that a little bit in the last chapter about what is the role of education and the importance, and why is it so important. And that is because it has such a high place. The two organizations, and I'm sure you've heard of this one, the NEA, views teachers as professionals, and it supports policies that give teachers more control over their professional lives, and recognizes teacher strikes for improving conditions and salaries. Now, this one hopefully doesn't happen very often, but I know I can remember there was times in my life where there was a threat of that, and nobody likes that because it creates some bad feelings and atmosphere. But sometimes out of frustration, that was a case. And what I was involved with a couple times is we went back to work without a contract because we couldn't settle. And there's another one that has similar, and that is the AFT, the American Federation of Teachers. And they're affiliated with the AFL-CIO. And if you don't know what that is, it's a Teamsters union. It's a labor union. And it views teachers like employees of large corporations and works to counter decisions from distant administrators that might disadvantage teachers and learners. Embraces the strike as a bargaining tool. Now, you're going to have to compare these two because on the test there's a question, and you have to understand the difference between these two. And they both support a strike, so don't get caught on that. And so you will have to distinguish a little bit more from that, from one to the other. Now let me talk a little bit about these phases that we go through in our professional development towards teaching. A pre-training phase, a formal preparation phase, then an induction and a continuing growth phase. And so of course you're in this pre-training phase now. Experience and attitudes developed before enrolling in college reflect an influence on their pre-training phase of professional development. In addition, your feelings about teaching may have been affected by teachers who taught you. I had a student we had students in a class one time had to report on journal articles, and the journal article, one student reported a journal article that she found that why teachers become teachers, and this researcher had interviewed, I don't know, like 5,000 teachers, and found that teachers became teachers one of three ways, and of course some of those were directly related to teachers who taught them. The first group was teachers that loved school when they were in school, had a great time, and can't wait to go back and recreate that great time for their students. And these tend to be your elementary teachers. Okay. The second group that she reported on said they felt so strongly about the materials, about their subjects, science, social studies, writing, math, that they felt teaching was an excellent outlet for it because they would be able to share that interest and enthusiasm they had. They become high school teachers. And the third group, and unfortunately I fit in this group, the third group tends to be the group of teachers that didn't enjoy school and didn't have a good experience and want to go back and correct it for others. And of course sometimes they tend to be your middle school teachers, or like myself, a SPED teacher, special ed teacher, but you're trying to correct it. Now I didn't know that. I never dawned on me ever until I heard this article report. And I said immediately, that third group is me, because I had some teachers that I wasn't very proud of. I had some teachers that I didn't think should be in teaching. I still don't think they're teaching. Some are still teaching, I didn't think they should be. So there. First one is the pre-training phase. The second one is that formal preparation, one of which is core studies. Now you know what that is? Core studies. That's 31 to 36 hours you take at the beginning. Okay. This is your math and writing and history and government and speech and those types of things, and they're pretty universal in most university systems. In other words, when you're coming into DSU or whatever university you're involved with, those first 30 to 36 hours look pretty much the same. You could be any major yet at the end of that time. We call those core studies. And let me give you a little pep talk for the core studies. I can't tell you how many times I've seen my teachers struggle because of their weak core studies, their weak basic knowledge of their subjects. I watched a math teacher that really struggled, in fact wasn't successful in student teaching because they didn't have that content knowledge, and that's what this turns into, is content. And so all I can say about your content is studying at these cores. Please work hard, study hard, and so that you're adequately prepared to teach some of those, especially if you're an elementary teacher. Now the second preparation is that specialization in academic majors, that you study that. So this is those first hours, and then we say this is in the College of Ed. In our DSU, the COE, you're admitted to the College of Ed. And then that professional ed is where you do your student teaching, do your practicum experiences, those types of things where you actually get out and get to do some of those things. So you have core studies, and then that teaching specialization in your major, and then that professional education. Now I'm telling you, these things are on the test. You're going to want to know about these. Typically math, science, liberal arts, fine arts constitutes 30 to 40% of that program. In this, you will have to know this. This is on the test also, to know the difference between a teaching specialization and an academic major. Please go to your textbook and read this, because you're going to know this. Middle school teachers may have a teaching specialization or a major, such as music, reading, science, math, or high school teachers almost always have to have the major. Now, the elementary people, of course, teaching is their major, elementary ed, but middle school can go either way here. So know the difference between a specialization and a major. Yeah, circle that or highlight that on your notes. And we talked about this last chapter also, the praxis test. Studies give the teacher kind of experience needed to deliver instruction and manage it. This is, like I say, this is like practical experiences. At DSU, the semester before you do a student teaching, you have to do a 3-week practicum, we call it, where you're out there just preparing. And then, of course, you have to, there's 3, Praxis 1, Praxis 2, and Praxis 3 that you have to pass. And the first one's those basic skills. Second one is your area of study. And the third is what we call pedagogy, what and how to teach. So that's a professional. And then we move into those phases that we talked about. Here's those induction years. First we had the pre-training and now the induction years. And that's just the first years. And that's the part you have to know about induction. This is on the test. Induction years are those first years. Recognition of professionals are developed in a process of career-long development, and that the early years are a time of intense learning. And I'm telling you, after the first year, I didn't know if I'd teach anymore. It was such a long, hard year. Those early years are tough until you kind of get some rhythm and routine. Much learning, yes, I think that was it. I learned as much in that first year as the next 5 combined. So there's adapting to school, and that's what you have to do, is adapt to the school life. Especially when you come from college, with the flexibility and autonomy you have in college, to coming into the school where you have to be there from 8 to 5 every day. And of course I coached, and so that generally was 8 to 7, at least it seemed like, you know, by the time we got out of the gym and stuff. The curriculum, resources, and personal relationships among teachers, you learn all that. The induction, pre-training, now induction, and then this continual growth phase. Teachers pursue a number of professional development processes or opportunities during the continual growth phase. These include like staff development, additional university courses, and professional organizations. Staff development generally is thought of as the things that your school does. Your school will bring stuff in and say, oh, we're going to have a staff development day. And you'll see, I know my kids have this regularly, every once in a while they're not in school because the teachers have in-service. In-service is the same as staff development. Okay, and then college and university courses are that ongoing, that you realize you have to have an additional 6 credits every 5 years. And so that's how you renew your certificate. And then work associate professional organizations like the one I belong to is called CEC, the Council for Exceptional Children. And your textbook has a number of those listed also. It talks about, here's the NEA link and those here, right here. I missed it here. And here's what I want you to do is look at these and see which these, like here's one on reading, social, society and technology and education, music, art, gifted, business, social studies, English, math, middle school, and science. All those different organizations come into play here. And so there's all kinds of things you need to do when you get connected with those. And joining those groups, you have the opportunity to meet people and shared interests, and they get productive. And they often have a lot of input into state standards and national standards, people from these groups. And so I've been involved with my group at the national level. Oh, here's some more of the PE one, and here's mine, the Council for Exceptional Children. Okay. So those are the groups. Okay. And then let's talk about those professional ethics. This is straight from NEA, as it's reported right here, that this is adopted from NEA in 1975 from their assembly. And there's really 3 parts. First, this preamble that tells what they believe, and then they talk about 2 principles. One is that commitment to students, and the next one is the commitment to the profession. Now, what I want you to do is, regardless, this is in your textbook. let's see here. This is in your textbook under this also. Okay, we got that. Let me go back over here. Okay. Here it is in your textbook. And what I want you to do is read this. Code of Ethics. We're talking about page 3940 here. You need to read all this, and then I need you to come into back to the wiki. You can stop this right now and come back to the wiki, and I'm going to post a message here, and that is and here's what you do. You'll respond to this and say, will uphold the Code of Ethics, and then sign your name here, and you know, just type your name. Okay, that's how I want you to do that. And I won't know for sure if you read them or not, but you're going to sense that I will know, so you're going to want to read them and sign. Okay, so there, that's your second one. The other one is coming as for the video, but you have to respond to the Code of Ethics one. Okay, now let me take you one other place that's what I call a more common Code of Ethics that I want to make you aware of. Here, I found this, and I thought this was very interesting, and that is, what are potential breaches of that Code of Ethics for a teacher? Well, these are some good ones that happen more common than those. First of all, having inappropriate relationships with the students. That could be sexual, or a business partnership, or like after-school buddies, or drinking binges, and we continually are bombarded by articles regularly about these kind of breaches. And as all I can say, especially sexual, it used to be just men had this problem, but now we have some very well documented about women that can't seem to cross these lines. And let me just tell you what I heard from a guy that was involved with this, is you have to stop this way back at the beginning. When it gets to the point where there's just two of you all alone someplace, it's too late. You stop this, and I know the ego is hard to let go of this, but you stop this when there's people hanging around at inappropriate times when they shouldn't be. You stop this early, or you'll be in prison. Okay, there. Now that's enough about that. The next one is a violation of clearly stated school rules and educational procedures. It's another one that you know what the rules are and you violate them. One I used to remember is we knew about the smoking rule, and I knew somebody that smoked in the school. How about failing to perform duties like teaching, chaos, wrong attitude toward teaching profession, or something like that? You're not doing a good job of teaching is a violation. Imposing on students personal views unrelated to the subject or lesson, or promoting such, especially for that do not represent mainstream, like extreme political or religious views, views of controversial social issues, interest in particular social groups. And I'm telling you, you're going to find, I find this is the hardest one. This is the hardest one, because sometimes I have a hard time separating that, my views from others. My views from, what is related and what isn't. And I think you will also. Next one is improper grading, or partial lack of fairness based on who is liked or who is not, race, past performance, background, and stuff. And again, just so you're aware of that, I had a teacher one time give me a bad mark on a grade on a test, and when I questioned him about it, he said to me, well, could it be that you were talking right at the time that I was grading and I didn't feel like giving you a better grade? You see, that's a little insight to what I said earlier before as how I became a teacher. He was a horrible teacher, and he had the audacity to tell me that. Okay, how about exposing students to embarrassment or disparagement, like emotional or psychological? And this has a new level it never used to have. It used to be that it was all right, that was fun to embarrass somebody, but I'm telling you anymore, that can be pretty serious. Or invading a student's privacy, it's something that you know that's private that you don't have any business in, or engaging students in unethical behavior. Or here's another one can happen: accepting gifts and favors, quid pro quo, like for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twist the words of righteous. Okay, be a little careful with that. Those rules are tougher than they used to be. And of course, just plain deceiving the students are their parents. So these are a little more common than they used to be, and I think a little easier to understand. So let's go back. The Code of Ethics. You're going to read through this and sign on that discussion board. Okay. Now, documenting performance. The purpose of that is to document performance and aid the professional development. Generally include like teacher-prepared material, like instructional units, tests, and stuff, and contributions of observers, like me. I'm one observer. Made by people who observed your work and like learners' work. And we call this that, portfolio. And at DSU, that you need to have a portfolio built to be admitted to the College of Education, then be admitted to student teaching, and it all goes on. We give you a pretty good go on that. We talk about context, these types of things are all on there. And this we have to do. You have to relate your stuff back to the mission of our school. But nonetheless, it's very common now to be admitted to college education that you need a portfolio. This here just takes you through the different levels. Now this, I'm not going to do much with this because this part of the assignment for this chapter, as you'll see on the wiki page, but what are those roles of educators? And I've listed these out. Now, then let me just quickly take you back there so you can see where this comes in. Right here, roles of educators. Okay, I made a little video here on how to do this, but I've assigned 2 people to 1 here. Okay, and that's why I'm not going to talk about it here. All right, and now again, you want to shut this off and go watch the video on Charles Best and respond to a question on the discussion board about that. Okay, a professional educator, and this is a question we ask in our interview as admitting to college education is, what is a professional educator? And that word stumps a lot of students, but it won't stump you. Become a professional educator requires that you understand something of the complexities of the interpersonal relationships you develop with students, parents, and other professionals. And the fact of the matter is that every year there are many individuals who decide that teaching is not for them. As you complete the class, you are challenged to continually reflect on the knowledge base of the profession and evaluate how this knowledge contributes to the development competent of a compassionate professional. Now, I'm going to say this that may be a surprise. Some of you will not be teachers. And that is that you may cross the finish line or not cross that, but you'll find other avenues, other things. I've had students that do student teaching and say, you know what, this isn't for me. But I've had way more the other way, that student teaching just whets their appetite, turns on the switch, and they can't wait to get started on their own. Okay? So this is what a professional educator does. It goes through this process. This knowledge of a profession, evaluate how knowledge contributes to their development. And I'm telling you, think of how things have changed. And I've been in this business 25 years, and I can't tell you how teaching's changed. Families have changed. Kids have changed. Schools have changed. Curriculum has changed. And that's the challenge you'll have. And it's not just our profession. It's a lot of professions need to change. But this one especially, you have to stay on the cutting edge and change. Now this is the last one where you go and you look on this video about the teacher shortage. Is really quite interesting. And there's a question on the discussion board about this. So watch this video and respond. That's chapter 2.